Since I like going back and listening to my old thoughts, I'm currently in the process of re-uploading some of my older videos in order to make them more compliant with YouTube's policies on reused content. But since I didn't want to do a lot of editing, here is the audio from my original review for this movie.
Quentin Tarantino is back for his 9th feature film. That is, if you consider Kill Bill to be one movie, or don't count Death Proof in Tarantino's filmography. And it will allegedly be his penultimate movie if you won't consider Star Trek to be an original Tarantino film, and if he doesn't decide to just make another movie once his 10th original film has come and gone. My point is, all the discourse surrounding Tarantino's future is pointless. Don't worry about what the man says he's going to do, because that could change at any moment. So let's just focus on what he is currently doing, which brings me back to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Set in 1969, this fictional Hollywood love letter finds TV star Rick Dalton and his stunt double Cliff Booth struggling to find work. The Hollywood landscape is changing, and Dalton is coming to grips with the fact that he may just be a has-been. Meanwhile, Sharon Tate and director Roman Polanski are living right next door to Dalton, and their destinies will tragically collide on one fateful night in August. The best aspect of this movie has to be the phenomenal chemistry between Leonardo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt. These guys were fantastic while on screen together. They both have larger-than-life personalities, so I was worried that the two actors might try a little too hard to chew up the screen, but they were both fucking great, and even better when together. DiCaprio and Pitt really sell that Dalton and Booth are more than just co-workers. They're best friends, and you can really believe their bond. Dalton sticks his neck out for Booth whenever he can, which is nice to see, especially considering how self-absorbed Dalton actually is. DiCaprio usually likes to yell his way into a good performance, and there is a lot of that in this movie, but it works. DiCaprio is the best, and I enjoyed how vulnerable DiCaprio was able to portray a megastar like Rick Dalton. But I especially enjoyed Brad Pitt's performance as Cliff Booth. Booth is just some guy. He's like a working class man that accidentally found himself working in Hollywood, which makes his character quite relatable, if you don't account for some of his more monstrous actions or his superhuman strength. Pitt also has some of the funniest bits in the entire movie. Tarantino is known for having razor-sharp dialogue, and I have a feeling that if anyone is going to be quoting this movie, it'll be from lines delivered by Brad Pitt. So DiCaprio and Pitt are hanging out together, and well yeah, that's pretty much it. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is pretty much just a hangout movie. I mentioned earlier how Dalton and Booth are feeling like has-beens, and that pretty much sums up the whole movie. The two spend a lot of time just reminiscing over the good old days. They're in their twilight years now, their best work is probably behind them, they're starting to feel useless, and that's pretty much it. No one ever actively goes out of their way to accomplish anything. I like Cliff Booth, but I don't really know what he wants as a person, other than steady work. We get a better sense of Dalton's aspirations, but he never really does anything to achieve those goals. So we're left with two guys just hanging out. The only issue is, this is a nearly 3-hour movie. So much time passes on and the narrative doesn't go anywhere. By the time the film is reaching its climax, I really struggled to understand what was the point of the whole endeavor. I guess this was Tarantino's way of making a love letter to Hollywood, but the whole project just felt overindulgent. There are a lot of unnecessary pieces to this film, including entire characters that could have been cut out completely. The finale is, thankfully, out-fucking-standing, and makes for one of the most satisfying climaxes this year. But getting to that point felt like a drag, especially since the story never feels like it's going in any particular direction. The climax is never built up towards, it just kinda happens, and that sentiment can apply to a lot of sequences in this movie. There are a lot of segments in the story that are very loosely connected in an order that doesn't really affect the outcome as a whole. I like the individual pieces of the story, but I think they work better as separate clips you can find on YouTube one day, as opposed to integral scenes that make up one whole, cohesive story. For example, if you're wondering why it's taken me so long to even mention Sharon Tate, Roman Polanski, and Charles Manson, it's because they have no place in this narrative. These characters and the tragic incident they're involved in merely serve as a footnote or a springboard to tell an entirely different story about an actor and his stunt double just hanging out. There's a scene-stealing performance from a little girl named Julia Butters, who acts in a Western TV show pilot with Rick Dalton, and this 10-year-old girl is given more screen time, has more lines of dialogue, is given better character development, and actually outperforms Margot Robbie as Sharon Tate. Take all of that information as you will. Al Pacino, Bruce Dern, Kurt Russell, Zoe Bell, Scoot McNairy, Michael Madsen, Luke Perry, and Dakota Fanning all have roles in this film, some more substantial than others, but they are all outshined by little Julia Butters, a young actress you've never even heard of before. What I'm trying to say is, gathering a star-studded cast just for the sake of having household names appear in your Hollywood love letter, and having real-life performers like Bruce Lee be depicted in your film, no matter how entertaining that may be, is not necessary if it has no bearing on the story being told. I'm not saying I don't like Tarantino's movies about alternate histories. I actually really love them and find them to be lots of fun. What if scenarios are joyful experiences, and I don't think they disrespect the legacy of historical events at all. Quite the contrary, it's clear that Tarantino had a certain love and reverence for this time period and the people involved. But again, for a movie that was pitched as being Tarantino's take on the infamous Manson murders, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is not about the Manson murders at all. The Manson family does have a looming presence over the narrative, but that's about it. They're not even properly developed antagonists. If you didn't know anything about the Manson family and the murders they committed, you might find yourself a bit confused while watching this movie. But Tarantino could have told a similar story without involving real-world events, so it's interesting that he decided to go this route again. What I'm trying to say is, you could honestly cut out Sharon Tate from this movie when you would have assumed that she would have an integral part to play in the story, and the film wouldn't be that much different. Hell, I might actually prefer to watch a fan edit with those cuts, since the movie would probably be leaner and more focused. So is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood worth seeing? Probably. It may not be Tarantino's best film, but it's a good one. The dialogue isn't as sharp, the violence isn't as brutal, the tension isn't as dramatic, and the story may not be as memorable as previous Tarantino outings, but the fairy tale-like narrative makes for an easygoing time at the movies. The film itself may be long and overindulgent, but the gorgeous cinematography, beautiful colors, pleasant soundtrack, and electric performances help make Once Upon a Time in Hollywood feel like a light summer breeze. And I would probably give the movie 3 3/4 out of 5 stars. Thanks for watching.